All right, for those of you just now joining in, we had some technical problems on the stream. You all didn't really miss much. Basically, just harping on the weather service. You can rewind and check that earlier. It said basically the fact that they're issuing winter storm watches in pieces is kind of silly. There's a 48 to 72 hour window to issue those, and the fact that they're issuing them piecemeal is giving people a false sense of security in areas that aren't currently under a watch, and that's kind of silly. That's all that we missed. You can rewind it after we get through, and we'll talk all about that. One of the other things we touched on, you're not going to see snow maps in this stream. Basically, there's way too much uncertainty in the precipitation types and when they change to show snow maps. And you're seeing some people share snow depth maps or total positive accumulation maps. And those are just straight 10 to 1. Water that falls is multiplied by 10, and that's snow, and that's not what's going to happen here. Anytime you have mixed precipitation, you cannot use positive snow change or necessarily snow depth maps, because they're gonna way overcount sleet. They're gonna count part of the freezing rain as a snow total. So we're not gonna count that. Not a lot has changed in my thinking. We're talking about like where we are now versus where we were. I do think you're going to see winter storm watches south and east of the areas that currently have winter storm watches. I think that those will be upgraded to winter storm warnings, potentially ice storm warnings. Most of the trend today, with the exception of the short-range Canadian, is for things to push a little bit to the south and east. And honestly, that's what we'd expect. Not really going to change much from the long post that I put out earlier, at least this evening. Basically, the only thing that I would change is I would push everything southeast by maybe 15 or 20 miles, maybe one county. But what you have to understand is that map had high risk and medium risk areas, and I think that the medium risk still stands. There's enough time here for things to change. So look for a new map to come out probably tomorrow morning or lunchtime, depending on how busy things get during the day. I do work a job outside of this. I am not the county emergency manager, as some people have confused today. I am Clay Graves. That is Clay Boozer. We do work together on things, but he has to take all of his cues from the National Weather Service. So I actually work in IT, and things do get busy. So sometimes you don't get all of the immediate updates. Again, sorry for anybody that was coming in late on that stream. Just rewind and catch that first 6 minutes. There's nothing we haven't already touched on at this point. So, big storm coming, Mississippi Valley, Ohio Valley, lower Ohio Valley. But there are some things that are interesting. There's some things I want to take a look at on the models. So, there's some questions in here. Thoughts on counties between Louisville and Lexington and Kentucky, Spencer, Shelby, Frankfort. It's not exactly my home turf, but I think you're in line for an ice storm. That's probably one of the higher risk areas for the ice right now. I would say, and I've said earlier, 50 miles either side of I-71 is the prime zone for ice. Now, if this comes in colder, which I think there's a chance for it to come in colder still, that all that gets pushed to the south and east. Obviously, those counties along 71 are going to be those counties that are the first that move over to the sleet, and then the first eventually to move over to snow if the system comes in cold enough. And, I really do think there's room for this to come in cold enough. We're going to get into some model discussions here. We're looking at the GFS right now, the 18 Zulu. Heather, I'll get to your question in just a second, because that's the bread and butter, right? Mason County is the big one. So we're looking at the 18 Zulu GFS at initiation. And one of the things that you're going to see right off the bat is you've got big round structures, right? And this is actually important in forecasting. When you see, either a high pressure zone or a low pressure zone, and it's very round, that means it's well contained, right? It's a bundled piece of energy. It's not strung out. It's not a wave. It's actually a point of energy. And high pressures count too. And as we move forward, you're going to see that northern piece kind of lifts out and forms the storm. But what you're going to see is the Arctic high really start to dive in. And we're going to stop here. This is 12 Zulu Thursday, so early Thursday morning. And what I want to point out here, obviously we're still in the rain, starting to smooch over to some freezing rain. But what you see is there is just this gorgeous 1044, 1046, very strong Arctic high up here, and it's really diving. If you look at the steepest gradient here, that high is moving to the southeast, and as we move forward in time, what you'll see is that high maintains its roundness, but it kind of starts to smush out, I guess is the best way to say it. It encounters this warm air that's being forced to the north, and it gets this real long strung out kind of look. That's the one thing that I'm not comfortable with in all of the modeling that I've looked at is the Arctic air gets to Minnesota, the core of that Arctic air gets to Minnesota and just kind of stops. That's not how this usually works. Arctic air is one of the hardest things the models have, one of the hardest things they process. Arctic air is dense and heavy. It can be shallow, it can be deep as compared to, moisture advection, which is usually full column. And as we move this forward, you see that the high actually just kind of lifts out across the lakes and gets strung out up there. And again, I'm not sure that happens. I think there's room for that Arctic high to dive just a little bit farther into our area and push all of this to the southeast just a little bit. Again, it's going to be 20 miles, 50 miles, but it's enough that it makes a difference. One of the things that the GFS also continues to show is just a frightening amount of freezing rain and sleet falling, and then a decent snow behind it. And that's actually something else that I want to get into real quick, is not only has the GFS shown this today, but we've also seen hints of it on the NAM. I'm going to try to get a good look at this here. And we may actually have to dodge Kentucky to see it, but there's an extra piece of low pressure right here, right? So it's not particularly strong, 1017. But what you see happen as that comes across the state is when it gets into North Carolina, you start to see some extra snow break out behind the front. And this is actually shown really well in the very last frame of the NAM. And I'm going to go back out to the full US view here, because when we look at the NAM, it's actually going a little bit stronger with it. And what we see is, so 1018 is here. This would be like 1016. So there's like a 1014 low that's spinning right here that's continuing to bring moisture into the storm system. Clean that up just a little bit. It's continuing to bring moisture from the Gulf into the storm system, and it's providing just enough energy, right? There's just enough energy, just enough forcing back here that this may be a third wave that develops on this storm. And if that's the case, things could get real interesting. The GFS kind of caught on what we've been calling in social media Storm 2. But this time frame is like an early Storm 2. And if this is actually a third wave along this Arctic boundary, that could put down significant additional snows in our area like Saturday and Sunday. Whereas the GFS a few days ago was bringing that in more like a Sunday night kind of thing. I did say earlier, we wouldn't jump on the 500 millibar, but I'm going to leave the telestrator up here real quick, and we're going to go look at what's happening aloft at 84 hours. And you see in that area, right, so the low is there. The low is going to be sitting somewhere in this area. You have a nice big piece of northern energy, and there's actually even more energy dropping into the back of this trough and is going to reinforce the energy that's there. The GFS takes this a step further and actually takes southern stream energy and reconnects it to the northern stream. Which is something that we really don't see very often. But anytime you've got Arctic air there and there's this much energy playing around, there's room for more precipitation to fall, especially if you've got you've got upper level winds. that are coming across the Gulf that are reinforcing this thing. You've got surface winds coming out of the Gulf, bringing more moisture. Your Arctic boundary is still sitting, somewhere across Kentucky. So I honestly think that there's going to be more evolution to this system than a lot of people are looking out for. And a couple of folks have been talking over on Twitter with me in private messages. This has got a lot of parallels to the 2003 system. Maybe just a hair farther north, which is probably good for folks down in like southeastern Kentucky. But that system was one big storm, but it kept pumping wave after wave after wave of low pressures along it and really extended the amount of time that the precipitation fell. So hopping back over to the GFS and then going back over to our precipitation type map, you'll see that this little area of snowfall just keeps coming all the way into now like late Friday. And then we get into Saturday, it finally pulls away. And then the GFS goes and tries to pop another storm like late Sunday, middle of the day to late evening Sunday. I'm not convinced that energy doesn't actually ride up that previously stalled front a little bit quicker. That's kind of what some of the shorter range models are showing. So what do we think? Again, there was that comment down there, Heather Dugan. What about Maeslick, Mount Olivet? Man, we are on the southern edge of a very, very big storm system, and it will take basically nothing to push that storm into our area and really cause problems. Certainly, if people are traveling northwest of Maysville, I would be making alternate plans. Cincinnati, especially, you get into that I-71 corridor, and there's a chance for a lot of precipitation. So we're not to the point where we can post maps, accumulation maps. You're going to see people going back and forth online, posting this kind of stuff. It's too early for it. The models are starting to get a handle on this storm. But, I mean, when we go back to the initialization, you can see that, gosh, the very first wave of this that's coming through, it's going to be all rain for us on Wednesday, is just now on shore. So you talk about Thursday, and now you're back over in the Gulf of Alaska. You're talking Friday. You're out in the Aleutians. So there's a lot to still figure out with this storm as it comes through. I do think there's room for it to come southeast. For areas along I-71, that's probably a good thing, because that means you're going to be in less of the freezing rain and more of the sleet and snow side of it. For areas south and east of I-71, like Lexington, Maysville, that US 68 corridor, that starts to get, that starts to get pretty dangerous. Watch the high pressure. That's going to be one of the keys. Where does the high pressure check up? Because your cold front, your boundary where the storm is going to run, is going to be basically the southern edge of wherever this high checks up. So I'll put it out here. This is, again, 12 Zulu Thursday. So Thursday morning, you've got your big Arctic high. Let's get our right tool. Get your big Arctic high up here. And you've got waves of low pressure, right? There's one here, there's one down here. This is what we've been calling 1A, 1B, maybe a 1C that's below where my picture is. And we really are trying to figure out the path of these, right? And the farther southeast they go, the more they pull the precipitation to the southeast. And you can very clearly see on this map that we've got a very tight set of isobars, and that's our Arctic front. You can actually see the front drawn on the map there. And the farther to the south and east this high pushes, the farther south and east the front pushes, the farther south and east the lows push as they rotate down in and around. And that brings all of the precipitation type southeast with it. Can we get it southeast enough to diminish the snow and ice threat, or at least the ice threat, across northern Kentucky, northeastern Kentucky? I'm not sold. Based on all the modeling today, there's going to be a pretty big ice storm. Now, one thing that's really important to note with that ice storm, and I'll try to explain this just a little bit better than leaving it a footnote. People are posting ice maps, And I said I wouldn't post a snow map, but I'm going to go post an ice map, and we're going to discuss what the problem is with these ice maps. So this is the freezing rain accumulation product, right? The problem with an ice map, if we bring in the sounding, is it's going to give you these numbers. They're really scary numbers. Like, nobody wants to see half an inch of freezing rain. Nobody wants to see a quarter inch of freezing rain. 1 inch of freezing rain is a scary number. But what you have to remember is that there's a difference between the quantifiable precipitation and the actual accretion of the freezing rain. So if you have a freezing drizzle over many, many hours, there's a little bit of water that falls, and when it hits, it freezes on a surface, and then more water falls and it hits and freezes on a surface, and you can effectively build those ice layers. However, when you have very heavy rainfall and the surface is below 32 degrees, a lot of that runs off before it actually has a chance to freeze. This stuff's not necessarily super cooled, right? It's not like freezing on contact. It actually has to hit, and there has to be some amount of time for it to freeze. So, how quickly does all of this freezing rain fall? That's a very important question to answer. And you can see here, we're going to go from nothing at 9 Zulu, so like 2 a.m. Thursday, to our maximum ice accumulation by 3 Zulu Friday. So, that's a 24-hour period. That's, an inch of rain in 24 hours is a lot. I don't know that all that accretes. I think that a significant amount of that actually doesn't accrete. Not saying that there won't be an ice storm, but I don't know that it's going to be as severe as what the models are showing. We've seen this a lot of times with a lot of different models. They just can't handle the difference between water falling out of the sky and water actually freezing on surfaces. The other thing to know about these maps is that some amount of sleet is going to fall in this freezing rain total, and some amount of sleet is going to fall in the snow total. So if you're looking at snow maps, they're going to we're going to exclude Illinois and Indiana because those guys are just going to hit the jackpot. After complaining literally all winter about having the snow hole, they're going to make 3 seasons worth of snow in one storm. But when you're in the mixing zone, some amount of that snowfall is going to fall as sleet. Some amount of that freezing rain is going to fall as sleet, and that really cuts those totals down. So, yes, there's a risk of an ice storm. Yes, there's going to be sleet over a good part of the state. There's probably going to be snow over a good part of the state. I think everybody gets something, and everybody in Kentucky gets something out of this. Is it going to reach warning potential in the southeast? Probably not. Southeast also needs to worry about flooding because there's a lot of water to fall. If we go over to precipitation products, and we're going to look at total accumulated precipitation through this time frame, it's a lot. I mean, like southeastern Kentucky is going to get 2-3 inches of rain in that time period, more if we end up getting like thunderstorms or something crank up down there. So, that's something that has to be watched down there. But I do think it ends as wintry precipitation down there too. I think most of the state gets at least some winter precipitation out of this. Lindsay Lou, I commute from Maysville to Cincinnati. Should I plan on staying in Cincinnati Wednesday and Thursday night, or just Thursday? Timing is actually really hard with this storm right now. And it's how far does that high pressure push and how fast does it get here? Right now, I would say your Thursday morning commute is going to have some freezing rain. There's going to be some slick spots, but it's not going to be shut down level on Thursday morning. By Thursday evening, things are going to look real bad. And that's actually why early on we were talking about the winter storm watch not being issued. They're issuing it in chunks based on when the cutover is going to happen. So when that winter storm watch drops, within probably 48 hours of that point is when you're going to be stuck where you're stuck. So consider Thursday night if you're really scared about it Wednesday night, but I would say mostly Thursday night, and make sure you're safe Thursday morning. Leave some lead time to get out. All that can change. So, follow up, stay looking at the Facebook, stay looking at the Twitter account, because all of this stuff will change. Like, I posted that long post today and said things may change and then will ? it's a complex storm. It's a powerful storm. It's a large storm. I mean, like physically, it covers a large portion of the United States. So when we're talking, there's a comment here, Ashland, Huntington area. Ashland or Huntington to Cincinnati, right? What's that difference there? 100 miles? Okay, 100 miles sounds like a lot when we're talking, drive time. This storm's covering like 1,000 miles plus, 2,000 miles. This thing's huge. It's going from Maine to Mexico. So things are going to change. And it's something that the models, the short range models, I guarantee you will change after precipitation begins to fall. It will be raining here on Wednesday, and the high resolution rapid refresh and the rapid refresh will be showing us different solutions hourly as the precipitation falls. So, there's a lot of specifics we'd like to get into, but it's going to have to suffice it to say there's a big winter storm in the neighborhood. Those winter storm watches are going to be issued. Probably some of those are going to be converted to ice storm warnings. And it's something that really everybody statewide needs to be paying attention to. I would say everybody in the states of Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio probably need to be paying attention to this. The other states, there's places where people are going to need to watch, but it's not like a statewide thing. But for us, the Midwest is ground zero on this storm. And then, like I said earlier, Storm 2 has the potential to follow up either as the third wave of this storm or another storm on Sunday. And then there's more shots after this. The pattern is absolutely loaded. And then we're going to go do something that I normally don't do on this, but we're going to go look at the global map right now. And we're going to go up to 500 millibars and check out the vortice. But you can see these dips. There's this storm here. There's a storm over in the Pacific Ocean. There's a storm back over Central Asia. There's a storm over Western Asia, Eastern Europe. There's a storm out over the Atlantic, and all this stuff rotates, right? It all comes back around. So as long as the jet stream has these big amplifications in it, there's going to be precipitation chances here. We are going to probably be in for a pretty nasty severe weather season because there's nothing really showing that it's going to change this pattern. And this, will track north as things get warmer into the spring, and you're going to end up with big cold fronts coming through and causing all kinds of problems. So there's no shortage of things to track. If you all have any extra questions, I'm going to wrap it up here. It's going to be a little bit shorter than we did the last time. Go ahead and get those last second questions in. I'll give you about 30 seconds. If we don't see anything, I'm going to go drink some lemonade because I said something inappropriate about an alcoholic adult beverage last time, and there are children watching. So lemonade tonight, and then I'm probably going to shut things down and check things out in the morning, see what happens there. It's not worth staying up super late for because we know what's going to happen. It's just those fine details, and those are going to change. Derek White asks, will I do this tomorrow? Derek, I plan to have a large text update early in the morning to lunchtime. So I'm going to take a look at the midnight runs and the early morning runs. And if things are slow enough at work, I might try to sneak in a quick text update with a new map. Certainly by lunch, there will be a full text update. And then tomorrow evening, we'll have to see. If things don't look particularly different, I may not do another live. If I get lots of questions on social media for the day and lots of people are interested in specifics or, technical discussion, which is what these lives are for, right? There's the Facebook group that is just, hey, this is what's happening. The Twitter group is a little bit more technical. It's tied in with the website. And these are really the uber technical discussions. If things change and look significantly different or there's a lot of interest, we'll do another live. Otherwise, it's going to come out as text and pictures and memes. Because there's always memes, and we'll talk about the severity that way. So hopefully you all are prepared for a winter storm. Whether or not we get it in a severe fashion or a light fashion is still up for debate. I think that it's probably going to be pretty rough. Areas north of 64, especially over toward I-71. I still stand by that 50 miles either side of I-71 because Maysville and Mason County is on that eastern edge of those 50 miles. And that's kind of within the wiggle room of the models right now. And if you don't want ice, pray for that big northwest shift that comes in, right? Because today they've been moving southeast, and if they stop and go northwest from now, well, that puts us back in the rain. But if those models continue to shift southeast overnight, a northwest shift puts us right back into it. So do your snow dances. Pray that we don't get too bad into the ice, but it's certainly looking like a possibility. And as always, we'll keep you updated over on Facebook and Twitter. Oh yeah, I can't forget Casey up here says, "Who dey?" Let's go Bengals, go on Super Bowl. All right, everybody, go find your drink. Have a good evening.